Hi, this is William English, English Management Solutions. This is part 2 of physical inventory in QuickBooks Point of Sale. If you've watched part 1, we went through why we want to take a physical inventory and also how to start the physical inventory process using a manual count. In this tutorial, we'll finish up with the manual count, all the screen options that we have in the physical inventory worksheet, and then how to use a physical inventory scanner, which you will see is my favorite part of the inventory process, if there can be one.
Note when I have a change, this section down here appears, and I can go ahead and say show only those items that have changed. And you can see that the expected is 1. I had previously counted 2, and then I went ahead and sold 1. So I'm going to change my count to 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and save and continue. So under the I want to menu is undo last save session. Keep in mind you can only go back 1. So an example of this is, let's say that you uploaded some counts, you saved it, and then you realized that you had previously done that section. So you want to go back to your last save section and go from there. The next is clear counts and restart. That's again under the I want to menu, clear counts and restart. The issue there is that, let's say that I started an inventory but I never completed it. Oftentimes I'll go into clients' locations, I'll go into the physical inventory and see that they started an inventory maybe 2 or 3 months ago and just never finished it up. So rather than go back and have to try and change and account for all the changes since we started, we're going to click on the clear counts and restart, which gives us basically a clean slate to start back on. I showed you how to filter items. Keep in mind though that anything that you do in a filtered view will not allow you to apply your changes and save the final inventory. You need to go back to the full view. I think this is a lacking in point of sale because it really makes the whole cycle count process much more difficult than it should be. Okay, so once you've accounted for everything, you're certain that all is good, you're going to go ahead and apply changes to inventory. It will create adjustment memos to update your inventory to the current values. Keep in mind though that you want to scan through and make sure that there's nothing that looks kind of funky before you apply the changes. What I mean by that is sometimes when people are using the physical inventory scanner, they will scan an item code into the quantity field. For example, let's say I had item number 1253 and I scan that quantity into the quantity field. Clearly that'll be wrong. So what you want to do is you want to go through very quickly and kind of check your counts for reality, just making sure that everything seems to be fine. You might even recount a few sections just to make absolutely certain. It's a lot of time and effort to do the physical inventory, so you want to have the best chance of getting it right. So what else can we do? We can look at the last physical inventory. Again, that's under the I want to menu. Reason why I might want to look at that is, let's say after I've applied my changes, even though I've given you all the warnings I can, you go and you take a look and you're like, something doesn't look right. So you can go in and show the last physical inventory and you can see if perhaps maybe you'd made an account. Unfortunately, about the only thing you can do there is to reverse the last physical inventory. This should be a last resort because it basically takes you back to the beginning and requires you to recount everything. If you see a few things that are wrong, it might make sense to just change those few things using a physical inventory quantity adjustment. If you wanted to look at the physical inventory other than the last one, really what you'd have to do is you'd have to go into the quantity adjustment history and look at the reason, physical inventory, and then review it from there. Okay, so now that I've showed you the hard way to do it, I'm going to talk about the easier way, and that's to use the physical inventory scanner. There are 2 scanners currently supported as of this tutorial. First is the Honeywell Metrologic Optimus scanner, and the other is a CipherLab 8000 scanner. Also supported is the 8001. The difference between the two is that the 8001 has a rechargeable battery. I do prefer the 5500, although it is no longer available from Metrologic. I find the display is easier to read. I have a rechargeable battery, and it just seems to fit better in my hand. In order to install the physical inventory scanner, the easiest way is actually to navigate to the drivers that are on your hard drive, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. The other thing that you can do is if you have a CD and you have the CD drive, my computer doesn't have a CD drive anymore, but you can go ahead and install the drivers from the CD. You can also click on that link and it'll take you to a place to download the drivers. Once you plug it in, it should automatically install and it will assign itself to a COM port. I'll show you that in a minute. We want to make sure that we've selected the right COM port, because if we don't, you're going to get an unable to connect message. So if you're using the MetroLogic, you want to make sure that the MetroLogic cradle is plugged in and also has power. If you're using the CipherLab, it doesn't require power to the cradle. Again, I can't stress enough that the most common problem they have are people that are picking the wrong COM port. I'll also show you a little trick about finding a different driver to make sure that you can resolve any issues that you have. So let's take a look at the actual scanners themselves. The navigation is the same whether or not you're using the MetroLogic or the CipherLab. The CipherLab is to your left, MetroLogic to your right. Notice that we have Collect, Upload, and Utilities. So those menus are pretty much the same, even though the menu options might be different depending on the firmware. 1, 2, and 3 will always be 1, 2, and 3. So let's look at the navigation on the device itself. You can see the orange button for the MetroLogic is the scan button. So I'm basically going to walk up to a barcode. I'm going to press the orange button. That will scan it into the device. The enter key is to the left or right, and it's the little arrows there. And so you're going to scan and hit the enter, scan and hit the enter. The escape key will take you back to the previous menu. And so, for example, if you're in the scan mode and you want to upload, you hit escape to get back to the main menu and then press 2 to go into upload. Backspace key, if for whatever reason you've typed in a quantity and you need to adjust it, you can backspace there. Arrows can move up and down through the menus. You can see that I have an alphanumeric. So, for example, if I have a code, a tag that will not scan, I can actually type in the item number and then go ahead and type in my quantity. The alpha function key, lower left, power button, lower right. So let's talk about pretty much the only thing here is to note is the alpha function key with the up arrow will allow you to change the contrast of the display. Oftentimes when we rent these barcode scanners, that the display will be dim, and so we get the call and we just tell them alpha, up arrow, until you see the contrast change. Again, this is a closer view of the menu, Collect, Upload, and Utilities. Utilities is where we would go in to erase all of our scans or the previous scan. I don't really deal with the time and date for the most part. Notice that it does tell me how many counts that I have in there. So a best practice is to make sure that before you start that count is 0. You can also go into the utilities menu, try to delete everything, and if you get a double beep, you know that the display and the memory is empty. Both of the devices have a backlight. As I said, I don't really use the time and date, and then escape to get back to the main menu. Okay, what can we scan? We can in fact scan the item number. In QuickBooks Point of Sale, the item number is what is used to create the barcode tags. So therefore that is a scannable field. UPC, these are your standard 13-digit UPC codes that you can find on pretty much any product. If you enter those into the item record, you can use those to scan. The last is ALU, alternate lookup. So if there's something in the alternate lookup field, you can go ahead and scan that. Alternate lookup allows you to put alphas in there. So sometimes if you have a barcode with alpha characters, you're going to want to put that in the alternate lookup, and that will allow you to scan that field. So we have two methods of basically being able to do this. The first is to scan every single item. If I have 10, I'm going to scan 10 different items into the physical inventory scanner. The other choice is if I have a quantity, I'm going to go ahead and scan the first one, and then in the quantity field, I'm going to type in the actual quantity rather than scanning each one individually. There are pros and cons on both. If you know that you're going to scan every single item, then you know that you've accounted for them and you don't have to worry about if there's an error in the count. However, if you have 100 of something, to go through and scan all 100 of them can be pretty painful. Keep in mind that you can also type in the item number itself. So let's say that the barcode is damaged on the tag, but you can see the item number, or maybe you don't have a barcode at all on that. You can go ahead and type in the item number, the quantity, and save. Again, if there's no barcode, you've got the alpha feature, and you can go ahead and type in that information. Editing a save count. If you go into the utilities menu, you have the ability to go in and actually change the items scan and whatnot. However, all practical purposes, it's just easier to delete the last scan and scan it again, rather than have to try and muck with the little tiny keyboard. And that again is done from the utility menu. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set the menu on the scanner, which means it has to go into the upload or number 2 option. Keep in mind that it can go to sleep, especially the MetroLogic if it's left on too long. So you want to make sure that it's on. And then you're going to use the add counts from scanner in the physical inventory module. We'll go through that in a moment. Once you're done, it'll upload, and then the next step is to clear the scanner memory. So we recommend that you go through and you make sure that all of your counts and everything's done, and then you're going to go ahead and save your selected scans and upload it from there. So this is what the screen looks like. You're going to see that you have the items that's scanned, and then you're going to have unrecognized scans. So the problem is that with an unrecognized item, is it basically, it shows me where it is kind of in the field that I've done, so, or the section that I've done. However, it's going to give me the best guess of what it thinks it should be, but you're going to go ahead and have to figure that out. So the other thing you can do is you can print the unrecognized scans. However, it's basically going to print everything that it was scanned and show you the unrecognized. For this reason, we recommend that you do the uploads in a section, maybe 50 to 100 at a time. It is much easier to go back and find those things that didn't scan correctly if you only have 50 items in your scanner, as opposed to scanning the whole store and finding that you have 20 or 30 unrecognized items, and then having to try and go back and look and see what happens there. So, if you have a non-inventory or group item scanned, the issue there is that there is no count associated with it. So basically, it's not going to change any of the counts. You can also go in, as we talked about, and add the counts by hand as well as the physical inventory scanner. Again, you got to make absolutely certain that if you do that, that you're going to only count those items manually and not count them with the physical inventory scanner. You can also use more than one scanner. However, you only use one cradle, and only one computer can be set to do physical inventory at a time. Oftentimes we'll rent 3, 4, 5 scanners to clients, and then they walk around the store. They have 4 or 5 people uploading. They'll go and do a section and upload, do a section and upload, so that if you have multiple scanners, it makes it pretty easy to get the store done quickly. The issue again is that you can only turn on physical inventory at one workstation, only connect one cradle to the system at a time. All right, so lastly, before we jump into the actual demo of the physical inventory scanner, is we're going to talk about multi-store. What we recommend is that each remote store does its own physical inventory. Now, headquarters has the capability of doing a physical inventory for the store. However, our best practices is that anything that relates to changing quantities, whether it's quantity adjustment memos or physical inventory or receiving, be done at that location. That way, we have an actual history of that in the item record. If we were to have done a physical inventory at headquarters, it would change the quantities, but there'd be no record of it. You just see that the quantities changed. So, and then at that point it gives us a mystery adjustment and we don't really know what happened.
In part 3, now that we've shown you the hard way to do it, we're going to show you the easy way to do it by showing you how to install a physical inventory scanner and using that to take a physical